When my mother-in-law and husband suddenly came to my newly built house, I couldn't help but panic. I couldn't believe such brazen people actually existed. Without understanding my feelings, my mother-in-law boldly entered the house and began touring the rooms on her own, saying, "It's a 6-bedroom apartment, isn't it? The garden is lovely with its European modern style. The bathroom is spacious with a jacuzzi, and it's equipped with the latest facilities." Actually, I convinced Bill to come back. I told him Brenda seemed to be having a tough time and that he should return to help her. "You must be struggling too, right?" she said as if doing me a favor, and laughed. "With a house like this, I could even move in." At that moment, something snapped inside me and laughter welled up. "What's so funny?" Thinking I had gone mad, my mother-in-law stepped back a bit. "Actually, I'm single now," I said. "What?" replied my mother-in-law. I still laugh when I remember her expression at that time. I should have told her not to be too surprised to keep her surgically fixed face intact. "My name is Brenda. I turned 30 this year. My childhood was a bit unusual. My father was a professional wrestler and my mother ran a club. They met at my mother's club, fell in love, and got married. Neither of them was tied down by family life. They both enjoyed their freedom. I was raised more by my grandparents and the nursery than by my parents, but I could feel that my parents loved each other and loved me. Even if our time together was short, I felt secure. Growing up free-spirited, I fell in love with the overseas culture I experienced during an exchange program in high school. After graduating, I traveled the world as a backpacker. Many parents would worry about a young girl planning such a trip, but my mother generously provided funds and encouraged me, saying, "It's good to gain various experiences while you're young." My father was a bit worried about me setting off, but he taught me self-defense before I left and even contacted wrestling organizations abroad for me. Thanks to that, I traveled to many countries with peace of mind, and I still keep in touch with the benefactors I met during my travels by email. After returning to the USA from 3 years of traveling, I used my travel experience and language skills to obtain a tour conductor's license and got a job at a travel agency. Starting my job, I sometimes felt overwhelmed by the many regulations, but seeing our clients happy became the greatest joy in my work. And among those clients was my current husband, Bill, and his mother, Myra. Bill told me I applied because I wanted to make my mother happy when I got a job, and from his words, it was clear how much he cared for his mother. His devotion to his mother was very impressive to me. My mother-in-law is a beautiful woman who looks at least 10 years younger than she actually is and used to work as a model. Meanwhile, Bill works at a top company located very near the company where I work. Our first encounter happened by chance during lunchtime. "Wait, are you that tour conductor?" he asked. Later in our conversations, he commented, "You were not dressed flamboyantly but were very unique and striking." At that time, as my work as a tour conductor had decreased and I was doing more desk work, his invitation to lunch became one of the highlights of my day. He had never met a woman like me before and was very interested in the novelty. In the office and elsewhere, my personality, which sets me apart from other women he meets, seemed to offer him a new allure. Sometimes, tired of the advances from other women, he would find solace in our conversations, occasionally letting slip his true feelings. Personally, I find it natural and comforting to talk with men. Hence, I have many male friends. This was very new and intriguing to him. After about half a year, he proposed a relationship in an unexpected way, and I felt quite hesitant. Having dated muscular men due to my father's influence, I was a bit worried about being with someone slim and elite like him. Thus, our conversations were fresh and stimulating for me. My friends told me, "You broke up with those muscular guys before, so maybe they weren't the right match," and advised me not to rule out a good compatibility with him. Convinced by their words and logic, I gathered the courage to start a serious relationship with Bill. Once we started dating, Bill carefully planned our dates. While I felt a bit shy each time, I began to feel confident and attractive as a woman. Our relationship progressed better than I had expected, and about a year into our relationship, Bill proposed to me. I made efforts to continue being the right partner for him, gradually acquiring femininity by wearing elegant dresses. Perhaps the fashion sense advised by my mother greatly helped during this time. When visiting his family home, I made sure to choose modest yet tasteful attire. However, upon seeing me, his mother remarked, "Oh my, Bill has chosen quite a plain woman, hasn't he?" While I was wondering how to respond, Bill casually said to his mother without any explanation, "Maybe someone like her is just right as a marriage partner." I felt a fierce anger inside, but I chose to remain quiet at that moment and decided to calmly confront him about this later, thinking it wise not to start a needless quarrel during our first meeting. Bill's father, an executive at a company, exuded a strict aura with the dignity of a distinguished family lineage. When his family asked about my parents, I clearly answered, "My father has retired from professional wrestling, and my mother manages a club." Hearing this, his parents frowned and immediately called Bill out of the room to discuss something. It seemed they had some issues with my family background, and I wondered why Bill hadn't explained anything about my environment to them beforehand. This incident highlighted a lack of communication within the family, presenting a new challenge for me to understand and manage. Bill's voice filled the room as he shouted, "Quiet. I say it's okay, so there shouldn't be a problem," ending the argument with a loud voice. Following this, when the three of them returned to their seats, Bill's father cleared his throat and declared strongly, "Well, he's an adult and can make his own decisions." On the way home, Bill apologized for his parents' rude behavior, saying, "I'll make sure we don't live with my parents. After all, I'm not marrying them." Although I reluctantly agreed to his proposal, I lost the chance to confront him about his earlier comment that someone like her is just right as a marriage partner. Growing up in a very free environment, I was unfamiliar with the concept of family prestige, and I couldn't fully grasp all its implications. Afterwards, Bill and I got married without any problems, and we started a new life in an apartment provided by his company. However, he demanded, as if it were a matter of course, "Since we live in this apartment because of me, you should pay for the living expenses and utilities." I was surprised and responded, "What?" He explained that the company subsidized housing still required us to pay the difference, and he did not want to lower his standard of living due to his high social expenses. He persistently tried to convince me. He is very conscious about his appearance, owning only luxury brands. Eventually, I gave in to his persuasion and agreed to pay for our living expenses and utilities, though I had my doubts about this arrangement. It was during this time that his mother, Myra, visited us. At that time, I was working on a shift schedule, making it difficult to synchronize days off with Bill. On days when Bill was off and I was working, Myra usually visited our home. When I came home tired from work, Myra would emerge from the living room and criticize, "Brenda, you're home late. Bill is hungry and upset. It's not like your job is that important. Why can't you come home earlier?" Bill, as usual, did not rebuke his mother's words and just continued watching TV. What happened to our initial agreement to share household chores? Reluctantly, when I started preparing dinner, she would say, "Oh, make enough for me and my husband too. We'll take it home." I struggled to understand why I had to prepare dinner for four. Despite feeling uncomfortable, I complied, recalling a moment at my in-laws' home when I hadn't served tea and was quietly remarked upon as the daughter of a nightclub owner. I could not tolerate criticism of my beloved mother, no matter how much I criticized myself. As Myra was about to leave with dinner for two, she quietly asked Bill at the front door, "Just $300 will do." Despite appearing wealthy, Myra consistently took money from Bill and even took home dinner for two. While I suspected there must be some circumstances, I never asked for specifics. Though I understood his devotion to his mother, I questioned why he continued to give her money at her whim even after our marriage. In a rare occurrence, Myra visited on my day off and asked me, "Brenda, I need your help. Can you lend me $500? I'll pay you back soon." This was the first time she had directly requested money from me. When I asked, "What's wrong?" after she asked for the money, Myra replied irritably, Just lend it to me without asking so many questions. Have you ever thought about who's responsible for the comfortable life you're leading? Upper class people have their reasons. Angered by her entitlement, I firmly responded, I'm sorry, but I cannot engage in financial transactions with family without a formal agreement. Myra twisted her face and snapped, this is unbelievable. I wonder why Bill married someone like you. And stormed off. Soon after, I received a call from Bill, who said, Mom's upset and says you were rude to her. Did you do something? I told her I couldn't lend her money. I replied honestly, to make such a fuss over such a small amount. You could have just lent it to her, he scolded. Why should I have to pay as well? You always give her money. I retorted, slightly angered. Bill sighed and said, well, the upper class has its expenses. It might be hard for you to understand, echoing his mother's rationale, and accused, you must have said something awful about her, right? Don't say such things. I really want you to stop, I pleaded, hurt by the baseless accusations. If you're saying you didn't, maybe you said it unconsciously. That's pretty serious, he suggested. This incident created a significant rift between us. I couldn't forgive him for believing his mother over me. Following this, our life together became tense and silent. During this strained period, I received the heartbreaking news that my mother needed surgery for cancer. Unfortunately, it was too late, and she passed away shortly after. My father and I were consumed by grief, spending our days in tears. After my mother's 7th-day memorial, when I returned home, Myra visited and stated bluntly, just so you know, the inheritance is marital property. Make sure Bill gets his share. The club my mother managed was well known in the entertainment district, and it was clear she had considerable assets. Angered by their audacious claim on the inheritance, I raised my voice. Why should I give anything to you too? Startled by my pushback, but quickly regaining her composure, Myra looked at Bill and said triumphantly, see, this is her true nature when you're not around. I was right all along. Bill looked at me disdainfully and said, really, she is like that. Good thing I prepared this, as he pulled out a divorce paper from the dresser. This marked a pivotal and painful moment in my life, confronting not only the loss of my mother but also the potential end of my marriage. When Myra mockingly laughed and showed me the signed divorce papers, saying, here's the divorce form. You'll be divorced if you don't apologize. I grabbed the papers and firmly declared, I will not apologize. If anything, you two should be the ones apologizing. In response, Myra, her face red with anger, shouted, Bill, let's go home. I can't stay with this woman. You deserve someone better. And she pulled him towards the door. Bill followed his mother and left through the front door. I was so frustrated by the situation that I broke down and cried right there. 3 months passed without any communication between us. While I was organizing things in my new house, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, it was Bill and Myra standing there. Myra, now seemingly cheerful and different from before, greeted me with a smile. Brenda, you've built such a wonderful house. You should have told us sooner. Confused, I asked, why are you here? Bill explained. Actually, when I went to the apartment to pick up some stuff, I saw you moving. I was curious because you went in a different direction than back to your parents' place. I followed you here. I had no idea you were building such a house. Despite my protest, hey, you can't just walk in like that. They didn't seem to care and began looking around my house. As they entered the spacious, old-fashioned style living and dining room, Myra exclaimed, wow, it's so big. It's like a model home. Bill's comment came off somewhat condescending. I'm impressed by the sense. You're doing well, aren't you? In reality, the interior selection was done by a professional coordinator, not by my personal taste, but I didn't bother to correct them and remained silent. Yes, I had invested $800,000 in this house, and it turned out beautifully. Trying to keep my irritation in check, I calmly asked, what do you want? If there's no particular reason, please leave. Myra feigned disappointment dramatically. Brenda, that's harsh. I really regret what happened before, she said while continuing to open each door in the house, commenting, It's a 6-bedroom apartment, isn't it? The garden is lovely with its European style. The bathroom is spacious with a jacuzzi, and it's equipped with the latest facilities. Clearly, there was no sign of genuine remorse. As my irritation grew, I raised my voice. So, what do you want? Twisting gracefully, Myra said, actually, I convinced Bill. I told him you seemed to be struggling, so he should come back to help you. You must be in trouble, right? She spoke as if doing me a favor and laughed. With a house like this, I could even move in. At that moment, something snapped inside me, and laughter welled up uncontrollably. What's so funny? Myra asked, stepping back slightly as if she thought I had lost my mind. Her reaction only amused me more, and I muttered, actually, I'm single now. Her surprised face was priceless, like a pigeon shot by a pellet gun, a memory that still makes me laugh. Wait a minute. Single? What do you mean? Aren't you Bill's wife? She asked. I submitted the divorce papers you left behind, with my name filled in, I replied. What? Myra paled and hurried to where Bill was lounging in the living room. Bill, when did you get divorced? She shouted. He was utterly baffled by the situation. Divorce? What are you talking about? Brenda wouldn't break up with me. You even said it, Mom, that she wouldn't easily let go of a catch like me. Bill responded loudly enough for me to hear in the hallway. But she submitted the divorce papers right away. I thought we weren't serious. What? Well, we can just fix that. It must have been just a spur of the moment. At that moment, I entered the living room and shouted, it wasn't just momentum. I was foolish to marry someone like you. I will never marry again. Bill opened his mouth as if to retort, but suddenly started crying, Mommy, she's being mean to me. That moment, I was certain that parting ways with this man was the right decision. As Myra stroked Bill's hair, she said, don't worry. Brenda is just a bit shaken up. When she calms down, she'll understand. There's nothing to gain from letting go of an elite like you, Bill. Brenda, please think it over again, while giving me a pressuring look. Furious, I replied, enough with the belittling. Always about elite this, elite that, only caring about appearances. He's actually a childish person who would soon be swallowed by the harsh realities of life. In response, Myra and Bill, their faces turning red, shouted back, how disrespectful. Besides, you built this mansion that's way too good for you? What were you planning to do? You were planning to rely on Bill's income. I firmly responded, unfortunately, I built this house with my father to start a guest house business, funded by government grants and my mother's inheritance. We don't need your help. What's a guest house? Bill asked, looking confused. That's why. I plan to host friends from around the world and soon open it to other guests as well. This will allow me to interact with people from all over the globe. It's what I truly wanted. I explained excitedly. As I spoke, their expressions shifted from shock to bewilderment. After the divorce, I had taken the time to reflect deeply on what I truly wanted in life. When my father mentioned that my mother had passed away and he was looking for a small apartment to live alone because our family home was getting old, I came up with the idea of starting a guest house business. Fortunately, my father is still active and has many friends abroad. He loves to talk and was quickly on board with this idea. The procedures required for a guest house are simpler than those for a traditional inn. So, using my own connections, I started the guest house business. When Bill asked irrelevantly, but then, I can't live here, can I? I shouted back, of course not. We're strangers now, so please leave immediately. They both shuddered at my response. However, Myra timidly clasped her hands and approached me, saying, Brenda, if you could spare it, could you lend me just $2,000? I'll pay it back quickly. Consider it a property division if you must. I took out my smartphone right there and dialed 911, showing them the screen. They jumped as if sprung and hurriedly left the house. Later, they inexplicably demanded a huge amount of property division, but my excellent lawyer dismissed these claims and even managed to demand property division from them. It turned out Myra had a plastic surgery addiction and had accumulated debt behind her husband's back, further wasting money on hosts who flattered her. This revelation led her husband to file for divorce. When Myra sought help from Bill, he rejected her, saying, "I have to pay alimony because of you, Mom. If you hadn't messed things up, things would have been peaceful." Meanwhile, Bill made a significant mistake at work and was transferred to a factory in a rural area. Unable to quit because of the property division payments and with no time to play, he now leads a plain life shuttling between home and the factory. As for Myra, she started working in the nightclub industry she once despised. However, her job at a bar targeting an older demographic didn't last due to her lack of customer service skills, and she was quickly fired. Currently, she is juggling multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet, but her exact situation is unclear. Likely, she has been unable to maintain her cosmetic surgeries, drastically changing her appearance. As for me, my guest house business has stabilized, providing a secure income. My father mainly manages the operations, and I work as a freelance writer, traveling freely around the world. I am grateful to be able to dedicate myself fully to what I love, using the inheritance I received from my beloved mother. How's your life going? Are you poor? What? What are you talking about? I'm worried about you. 3 days had passed since David and his parents left. My mother-in-law contacted me. After returning from a family memorial service at my parents' home, I found that everything except my belongings was gone. Without my knowledge, they had moved out. Worried about me? You said you were working for $8 per hour, right? Who told you that? I wonder why he married such a woman. My son has become an executive. With that remark, everything became clear. David had been lying to his parents. He struggled with the disparity between us and had asked to keep it a secret from his parents. It felt like a betrayal of the grace I had shown. Who did they think I was staying silent for? You really don't understand anything, do you? Ha! That just sounds like an excuse. It's not an excuse. Originally, it was David who worked for $8 per hour, and I was the one who became an executive. All this time, we've been living off my executive salary. If you want to live with us, I can hire you as a housemaid. Are you serious? Of course. If you decide to work as our housemaid, I might even tell you the address. I couldn't imagine choosing to live with them. That's when I began my counterattack. I refuse. The $8 per hour story is about your son. I choose divorce over enduring that any longer. Stop joking. My son can't be earning such a low wage. Have you gone mad? Through the phone, I could hear my mother-in-law laughing loudly. If you don't believe it, suit yourself. You'll find out who's right soon enough. Or why don't you ask your son directly? What an unpleasant woman. I thought I help you, but I've changed my mind. That's exactly what I want. My mother-in-law seemed angry as she hung up the phone. Soon after, I received a call from David. He must have been questioned by his mother. Naturally, I decided to ignore it. I even set up call blocking. He must be panicking. I decided to enjoy a free life on my own. As a result, David and his family will face difficulties. My name is Lucy. I'm an executive at the company my late father left behind. I have 2 brothers, each holding the positions of president and vice president. Originally, I was working in a different field. That's when I met David, my current husband. It started with a drinking party I was invited to by a friend. What do you do for work, Lucy? Oh, just a mundane office job. And you, David? I'm in sales. Sales? That's impressive. I'm not good at speaking, so I admire that. Really? Thank you. Thinking back, David may have had a tendency to exaggerate even then. At that time, I believed he really was in sales. However, as our conversation flowed pretty well, we exchanged contact information. After regular dating, we both felt comfortable with each other and smoothly moved towards marriage. I've been thinking of meeting your parents soon. Yes, we should do that. How about next Sunday? That's fine, no problem. David had told me his parents were welcoming and gentle. However, upon visiting, It was entirely different. Far from being welcomed, I felt an atmosphere of wanting me to leave immediately. My mother-in-law's attitude was especially bad. "Lucy, you work in an office, right?" "Yes, that's correct." "How much do you earn?" "What do you mean?" "Don't be silly. I'm asking about your salary." I understood what she meant without needing to be told. What I wanted to know was why she was asking such questions. She was clearly looking down on me. I hoped that David would help me, but he seemed indifferent. He should have at least shown some concern, yet he remained silent. "Just calm down a bit. Money can be earned later. These things should be clarified early on." My in-laws continued to argue in front of me. It made me wonder what I was even doing there. I doubted if there was any point in coming. Eventually, my mother-in-law acquiesced, following my father-in-law's lead. And on the way home, "Why didn't you say anything back there?" "Huh? Don't just say huh." David seemed not to understand what I was talking about. I sighed involuntarily. I began to feel anxious about how we could continue as a couple in this state. "Sorry. I just get nervous in front of my parents." He looked like a scolded puppy. Pitiful. Seeing his face made me feel as if I was the one doing something wrong if I said more. 3 days later, we submitted our marriage registration. After marrying, we hardly interacted with my in-laws and lived a peaceful everyday life. Then I got a call from my parents. "There's something important to discuss. Can you come back home?" It was a sudden call. "That's fine, but what's up?" "It's a bit difficult to discuss over the phone." "Really? Okay, I'll come over later then." And so, I decided to visit them. My mother and brothers lived together at our family home. "I'm back. We've been waiting. Please, have a seat." "Sure, that's fine." I sat down facing my brothers. The atmosphere was filled with a unique tension. Unable to bear it, I asked my brother what this was about. "You know we've taken over Dad's business, right?" My brother said, "Yes, I understand that. You've explained it before," I replied. "We want to add you to the management team and have you work in our company." "What? Why this sudden development?" I was surprised. Then my younger brother began to explain. "Lucy, you've always been observant of others, right?" I was taken aback and argued, "Wait, what are you talking about?" "Actually, recently someone we trusted ran off with our money." "Really?" I was shocked. "Yes, it's true. This person had been associated with us since Dad was alive. He was an executive, but now there's a vacancy." I couldn't accept this sudden turn of events right away. "I can't just agree to this right away." I hesitated, and then my mother spoke. "Lucy, it's a lot to ask, but can you help us?" "Mom, are you okay to be up?" I asked. She had been unwell and resting a lot for the past year. "I'm feeling better today, don't worry." "But is this request too much?" she inquired. "It's sudden. I need some time to think." I couldn't make a decision that day and returned to my own home. Feeling lost on how to respond to my mother's request, I decided to discuss it with David. "Wow, that's great. You should definitely accept it," he said, clearly thrilled. "Are you sure?" "Well, it could mean a better salary than what you have now, right? We haven't discussed the details yet." "I support your brother's proposal." It seemed there was a special reason behind his enthusiastic support. A week after our discussion, I received another call from home. "Please come back home immediately." "What's happened?" "It's Mom." I left work early and rushed back home. Upon arrival, many people had already gathered. In the midst of them, my mother was lying there. I can't believe it. It was too sudden, and I couldn't grasp the reality. It was unexpected. According to my eldest brother, our mother had already passed away when he woke up in the morning. I couldn't even see her face. All I could do was stand there, stunned. "Lucy, where is David?" "Oh, right. I haven't contacted him yet. I'll call him right now." I hurriedly made the call, but there was no response from David. After several attempts and no response, I reluctantly left a message on his voicemail. "I need you to come immediately. There's something important," I said urgently. As time slowly passed, about 2 hours later, David finally arrived at my family home. Sorry for being late. I was really busy with work today. Couldn't find the time, he said lightly, apologizing. However, seeing David's demeanor, his expression carried an inexplicable lightness, and I felt a surge of irritation and anger. Why do you look so happy? Don't you realize my mom has passed away? I asked. No, it's not like that, David replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Anyway, I just want some peace right now, I told him, but he laughed it off, saying, Don't worry, it's all going to be okay. Visitors kept coming to the house, and we were busy attending to them. As time went on, I noticed it was already past midnight. Exhausted, I slumped onto the sofa to rest. Then, David suddenly brought up an unbelievable topic. He, with a smile, started talking about dividing the inheritance. So, what about the inheritance? Do you get anything? He asked nonchalantly. I was shocked and confused by his question. Why would you ask that all of a sudden? Don't you understand the situation? I responded, Well, your father was managing a company, so there might be a significant inheritance, right? David continued, but I was filled with sorrow and anger. Stop it. Talking about inheritance at a time like this is just too insensitive. I raised my voice. But this is important. We have to think about the future, he said, but his words didn't resonate with me. If all you want to talk about is money, you can leave, I retorted. I was stunned by David's thoughtless attitude, pained by the disconnect in his perception amidst the heavy atmosphere of losing a family member. The air between David and me felt completely different from before. Sitting on the sofa, I was deep in thought about how to overcome the challenges ahead, weighed down by profound grief. Okay, I understand, David replied and then really left. I couldn't believe I had to be so direct. As David left, my eldest brother entered the room. Is there a problem? He asked. Yeah, a little. It's tough for you too. It's unimaginable to talk about inheritance in this situation. Usually, such a topic wouldn't come up. Actually, I told him about you inviting me to join the company, and he was very enthusiastic about it. Maybe he has a strong fixation on money. There might be something to it. That might be true. I pondered. My brother reassured me, don't worry about us, and urged me to return to my home. Later, I attempted to call David, but he did not respond. So, I decided to contact David's parents. Lucy, we heard from David. What happened to your mother is truly unfortunate. Did he tell you anything else? Yes, he said you were trying to handle the inheritance by yourself. My mother-in-law claimed. What? No, that's not true at all. We haven't even discussed such a thing. Really? Are you hiding something? The conversation with my mother-in-law was not productive. Anyway, now is not the time for such discussions. You're quite cheeky, aren't you? I'll take that as a compliment, I replied. Then, my mother-in-law abruptly hung up the phone, unable to bear it any longer. She seemed quite angry, but it wasn't very important to me. When I got home, David was nowhere to be found that day. The next day, I confronted him. Where on earth were you? Does it matter where I was? I see. Our relationship was deteriorating day by day. A week passed with hardly any conversation. My brothers took care of the funeral arrangements for our mother. The funeral went smoothly, but David and his parents were nowhere to be seen. Amidst this, I made a decision. Brother, I'll help out with the business. Really? Are you sure that's okay? You can take more time to think about it. We were a bit hasty last time and didn't consider your situation enough. Thank you. But I've made up my mind. I'll be fine. Thus, I started my new career as an executive in my brother's company. After debating whether to tell David, I decided it was better to be honest than to keep it a secret and face problems later. I'll be busy with my duties as a director from now on. Really? Then work hard for my sake too. Of course, I will, I replied. I resigned from my job and decided to switch to my brother's company. The new job was challenging and tiring, but I found it fulfilling. 6 months later, David said something unexpected. Actually, I quit my job. What? Why so suddenly? The last job just wasn't right for me. Weren't you in sales? Sales? No, I was working in a factory. What, really? I was speechless with this shocking revelation. All this time, I thought he was in sales, but he wasn't. So, he had been lying to me since we met. You've been lying all this time. Lying about what? Forget it. It doesn't matter anymore. What are you talking about? David asked. I regretted marrying someone like him. What are you planning to do now? You don't have a job, do you? It's fine, you're here. You're a director, right? You must be earning a good salary, David said. Finally, I understood. David had become complacent about working. So, you were after my money. Stop talking as if I did something wrong. Besides, it's better to keep the director position a secret from my family, right? That's true. And starting next month, I have to start sending money to my family. I need your help with that. Wait, this is the first I'm hearing about this. I just decided to do it recently. Indeed, it would be troublesome if my in-laws found out, but I couldn't just accept this. But if it gets out, you'll be in trouble too, right? Ah, David said, surprised. You know, if they find out you're unemployed, they'll be angry too, right? So, you need to find some work too. What do you mean? It's a trade-off. This way, both our secrets are safe, right? That makes sense. So, we agree on this then. All right, I don't want to worry my parents, so please help me. David reluctantly agreed. However, I had no intention of continuing this situation indefinitely. Afterward, David started a part-time job as per my suggestion, but he was only earning a meager $8 per hour. He wasn't working full-time, and his lifestyle was more akin to that of a free-spirited student. Moreover, he was spending his earnings on gambling. Why don't you go out sometimes? It's not good to always stay at home. Well, don't worry about me. Let me live as I please. Eventually, David seemed to forget the secret we were hiding. From that time, he became increasingly unmanageable. Despite being only a part-timer, he started coming home late and going out more often. Lately, you're coming home late. Is something going on? I asked. Well, there's been more overtime, David replied. But didn't you choose that job because there was no overtime? That was the case, but things have changed. And what about going out when there's no work? I probed further. I need to exercise outside sometimes, he responded, but I questioned. But why do you need to dress up for that? I felt doubtful about David's changes and kept questioning him. At first, he appeared composed, but he couldn't hide his confusion under my questioning. I can't answer everything all at once. Give me some time to think. I don't think the questions are that difficult. Just because you're an executive, are you looking down on me? Why would you think that? If you want to belittle me, go ahead. Wait, where are you going? Anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's none of your business. With those words, David left the house. How self-centered can a person be? In the end, he didn't return until morning, and when he did come home, he immediately fell asleep without saying a word. I left for work when it was time. Upon arriving at the office, my eldest brother approached me. What's wrong? You look so down. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's about your husband, isn't it? Yes, it is. We'll talk later. Then, I joined my second brother, and the three of us had a conversation. I explained everything that had happened. You've endured a lot in such a situation. I would have divorced him immediately. I know I need to change the current situation, but do you have any plans? A little. The doubts about David's behavior were growing, but I still hoped he would return to the man he once was. I couldn't bring myself to completely give up on him, but I was soon made to realize that my hope was naive. If that's the case, you should resolve the issues sooner rather than later. Yes, you're right. This isn't advice, but there must be a reason behind his actions. It would be good to find out what that is first. Thank you. I'll do just that. I followed my brother's advice and decided to investigate David's behavior. Since I had no idea what he was doing while I was away at work, I asked my second brother to set up a small camera. Be careful, it would be a problem if it's discovered. Choose the installation spot wisely. Understood, thank you. You can view the recorded footage on your smartphone anytime. That's helpful. I'm not great with technical stuff. While David was out, I installed cameras in the living room and bedroom. I became so anxious about what the cameras might capture that I couldn't sleep at night. Then, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Despite suspecting it wasn't good news, I answered. Lucy, is it true you quit your job? What? I don't recall quitting my job. Really? David said you did. No, I'm still working. Well, it's none of my business. But be sure to thank David. Wait a minute. I raised my voice involuntarily. I couldn't believe David told her such a baseless story. I wished he would come home soon. Unaware of my feelings, David returned home smiling. I hit the jackpot at the casino today. Here's a souvenir, he said, handing me a bag full of prizes. What's this? I asked. It's a gift, he replied. The gift wasn't important. By the way, I got a call from your mother earlier. From Mom? What did she say? David asked. Apparently, I've quit my job. Oh, that. I got a bit carried away. I was told I should be grateful. Don't say unnecessary things from now on. I told him. Got it? I'll be careful. If something like this happens again, you understand, right? I warned him. Yeah. Don't be so harsh on me, he replied. That depends on your actions. After that, David seemed to behave more quietly for a while. He appeared to be working hard and going out less. Then, an opportunity arose to visit my family home. I'm heading back to my parents' place for a bit. I plan to return in 2 days. Okay, take care. Have fun. I'm not going for fun. My bad. Isn't it time for you to leave? All right, I'm counting on you to take care of things here. He seemed oddly cheerful. Leaving him alone made me uneasy, but I was busy with the first anniversary of my mother's death. At home, my brothers warmly welcomed me. Thanks for making the effort to come. It's natural for me to come for Mom's first anniversary. By the way, how's the camera situation going? The camera thing? Yeah, that high-tech camera we talked about. Oh, the one I asked to keep an eye on David? Exactly. Did you forget? Yeah, I've been so busy with other things that I completely forgot about it. My mind had been preoccupied with daily tasks and interactions with my mother-in-law, so keeping an eye on David had slipped my mind. I'll check it when I get home. You can see it right now on your smartphone. That's right. I forgot I could do that. Make sure you remember. Following my brother's suggestion, I searched for past footage on my smartphone. The screen showed David getting ready to go out. Checking the date of the video, it was from about a week ago. Interesting. Did you find something? Yes, look at this. What is it? I decided to show my brothers a video I had recorded earlier. The video not only showed the image but also perfectly captured the audio. On the screen, David was speaking on the phone with another woman, and they were making plans to meet soon. Furthermore, it was clear from their conversation that they were exchanging words of love. These facts could serve as clear evidence of David's infidelity. This is undeniable proof of cheating. I thought to myself, my anger was indescribable. How could this happen? I can't believe it. I murmured to myself. Feeling such a complex mix of emotions, I muttered, he's a terrible person. You couldn't see David's true nature, my eldest brother joked, prompting me to glare at him. It's just a joke. Don't glare at me like that. After successfully completing my mother's first anniversary, I rushed back home. I tried contacting David several times, but there was no response. When I arrived home, everything except my belongings was gone. I was speechless. What have they done? Frustrated, I tried contacting my in-laws, but there was no response from them either. Looking around, I noticed the camera I had installed was still in place. Maybe this will give me some insight, I thought, and immediately checked the footage. On the screen, David and his parents were visible, and their conversation was clearly audible. That should be enough. I wonder what face she'll make when she gets back. Let's go. We have no more business here. Yes, let's do that. Hearing this conversation, I hurried to my in-laws' house, suspecting something. It was a 40-minute train ride away. Though I had an ominous feeling, I was shocked to see the state of my in-laws' house then. The house had already been sold. Standing there, a neighbor approached me. The people from that house moved out a few days ago. Do you know where they moved to? I don't know the details, but they said they were going to live with their son and seemed happy about it. I see, thank you. From that moment, I vowed to seek revenge. Returning home, I planned my next steps, but I had no idea where David and his parents were and couldn't contact them. The situation was at a standstill, and it had been 3 days since they disappeared. Enjoying your poor lifestyle? Poor? What do you mean? I asked. I'm worried about you, came a call from my mother-in-law out of the blue. Worried that I'm working for an hourly wage of $8? I questioned. Yes, David said so. I wonder why he married such a woman. He's achieved so much more. My mother-in-law said. He said that too. I murmured. Everything clicked into place. David had been deceiving his parents. He struggled with the financial disparity between us, asking me to keep it a secret from his parents, but it had backfired. It felt like gratitude had turned into resentment. I questioned myself why I had stayed silent. Your understanding of the situation seems lacking, Mother. What? The one who doesn't understand is you. Do you believe everything David says is correct? As a mother, it's natural to believe in my son. That's truly regrettable. That's just an excuse. But it wasn't an excuse. In reality, it was David who was working for an hourly wage of $8 while I held an executive position. Our life was supported by my executive salary. Yet, believing her son's lies, my mother-in-law said, "If you want to live with us, I can hire you as a housemaid. Are you serious about that?" Of course, I'm serious. If you agree to work as a housemaid, I don't mind giving you the address. I needed to make it clear that I had no intention of living with them. I absolutely refuse. The one who works for $8 per hour is David, not me. I've endured this long enough, and now I'm considering divorce. That's absurd. Stop joking. Have you gone mad? I could hear her laughing through the phone. Time will tell who is right. Why don't you confirm with David? I'm at my limit with you. I thought about helping you, but not anymore. That's exactly what I want. After she hung up in anger, David contacted me within a few minutes. He must have been questioned by his mother. Naturally, I decided not to respond to David's calls and set them to be blocked. He must be panicking. I planned to enjoy a life of freedom on my own. This decision would likely lead to a harsh outcome for David and his family. The next day, I decided to move out. Even if David and his family returned, I would no longer be there, just returning the treatment I received. I discussed the situation with my brothers and immediately visited a nearby real estate agent. I was looking for a place to move into as soon as possible. There's a property available for immediate occupancy, but the rent is a bit high. That's not a problem. I'll take that property. Understood. Let's proceed with the paperwork. I completed the contract that day and contacted a moving company. Fortunately, since it was only my belongings, the move was completed quickly. After that, I relaxed in my new home, enjoying the life of living alone. 2 weeks later, I noticed many missed calls from my mother-in-law on my smartphone. David was already blocked, so I was only receiving calls from my mother-in-law. I decided to answer, even though it was a bit of a hassle. But when I picked up, it wasn't my mother-in-law but David. Where are you? I can't get into the house. I've moved out. Moved? Why? Why? You started it, didn't you? So I did the same. Wait, what about our life together? You shouldn't have lied in the first place. It's not my problem. But also, I'm considering a divorce. I'll send the papers, so give me your new address. Then David started laughing. Right? You don't know my new address. So, no divorce then. I had anticipated such a response. but I'm not one to give up easily. I may not know the address, but I won't give up on the divorce. I can find it out with some investigation. Wait a minute. It's unreasonable for us to split up. It's not unreasonable. You should tell the truth to your parents. It might lighten your heart. Fine. I'll talk to them. I can't trust your words anymore. Goodbye. After ending the call, I immediately headed to a lawyer's office. I decided to consult with the company's legal advisor, as suggested by my brother. After explaining the situation and showing the footage recorded by the camera, he agreed to take on my case. He promptly began preparing for the divorce proceedings. A few days later, I left a message on my mother-in-law's phone. Then, 7 days later, David and his family showed up at the agreed place. Thanks for coming. Let's begin the proceedings. Yes, that's why we're here. Resorting to hiring a lawyer, you must be desperate, my mother-in-law said with a laugh, but David's face had turned pale. In the end, it turned out that David had not yet told his parents the truth, but that worked in my favor. Firstly, due to David's infidelity, I will be filing for divorce and seeking compensation. What are you talking about? Please have a look at this. I showed David and his parents the footage recorded by the camera. This is the evidence. If you have any objections, please speak up. David remained silent. David, what is this about? Explain yourself. Well, actually. Then, I presented documents regarding the claim for compensation. The documents detailed the lack of contribution to household expenses, insufficient cooperation in housework, lies to his parents, and the emotional distress caused to me. What is this? It's absolutely false. This is unacceptable. Even my normally quiet father-in-law seemed unable to contain his dismay. While I wasn't particularly interested in his reaction, I was ready to deal with him if he became an adversary. Then, please have a look at this. I handed his parents my business card. What's this? Let me see. They scrutinized the card closely. This is the reality. The truth David has been hiding all along. What about the story of earning $8 per hour? That was about David. In reality, I've been supporting our household. David waging his earnings for gambling. Hearing this, his parents turned their anger towards David. So, all the living expenses were covered by. Yes, I've been shouldering them. David, why would you lie like this? We were mistaken. It's too late now. Why did you do this? I just didn't want to worry you both. It was like a family argument. I had no more expectations from them. Please have your family quarrel elsewhere. I don't have time for this. With that, my in-laws suddenly changed their demeanor, showing an apologetic attitude. Lucy, please forgive us. We're victims in this too. Mother's right. We never hated you, Lucy. Even so, my decision won't change. Their apologies at this timing felt pathetically insincere. David remained silent, looking down. Could you sign this divorce paper? What is this? I want to end this situation quickly. You have no right to object. All right, I understand. David signed the divorce papers, holding back tears. After confirming his signature, I decided to leave the room. Goodbye, then. As I walked away, I could hear David and his parents arguing outside. Their future was uncertain, but a stable life seemed unlikely. They had managed to get by only because of my support. What an incredibly thoughtless family. Later, I submitted the divorce papers through my lawyer. Finally, I gained my freedom. Is the divorce finalized? Yes, you must already know, right? Our company lawyer is always well informed. But at least now I can relax. I can focus on work. My eldest brother said this lightly, but according to my second brother, he had been quite worried about me. It might be his way of hiding his concern. I've heard about David and his family's current situation through the lawyer. So it ended up like that. Apparently, David's mistress also disappeared after learning the truth. Naturally, I made sure to demand compensation. Then, I got a call from my mother-in-law. There's something I want to ask, she said. Given the circumstances, her request was obvious. Are you asking for financial support? Yes. We can't make ends meet. The problem started with David, you know? With 3 of you, you should manage. Don't say that. Can't you help us? I have no reason to help you. You should go to hell. That's what I should be saying to you. Goodbye. Currently, David and his parents are living in a cramped space. They had relied on the income they thought David was earning, not working themselves. In reality, that money had been coming from me. Now, I'm living freely on my own, unbound by anyone. Work is going well, and every day is fulfilling. Today, as I look up at the clear sky, I'm on my way to work.
Actually, it's a bit strange for a woman your age to live with her parents. It's better to be independent. Independent. My sister-in-law, who spoke as if preaching about being independent, probably never imagined that the word independent she used would be thrown back at her. My name is Amy. With the slogan "Work is the best partner," I am a 35-year-old enjoying single life. I had a boyfriend in my 20s, but I somehow ended up single at this age. Well, it's not that I have completely given up on marriage. In such a situation, I live at my parents' house. Work is going well, and my parents are healthy and well. I am living peacefully every day without any dissatisfaction or anxiety, but there are people who persistently criticize me. How long do you plan to stay single, Amy? Of course I'll get married if there's a chance, but right now I'm fulfilled with my work. She laughed sarcastically at my answer. You say work is fun as an excuse to comfort your lonely self because you can't get married. Poor thing. Those who can't get married escape from reality by immersing themselves in work. What's so pitiful? The one who despises me being single is my sister-in-law, Susan. She thinks that married people superior and more noble than those who are single. My brother, 3 years older than me, got married just a year ago. I vividly remember the day my sister-in-law first visited our house. Amy, you're 34 and still don't have a boyfriend. Are you okay? Have you ever had a boyfriend before? If you'd like, shall I introduce you to my friend? He's a bit quirky, though. At your age, you might need to compromise a bit, right? Otherwise, you might miss the right time. I never thought I would be subjected to such rude words the first time I met her. Yes, well, was the only dumb response I could muster. My sister-in-law is the same age as me. Unlike me, she seems to be the type who brags about being married. From the beginning, she showed an attitude of trying to be superior. She is also very insensitive. She looked up my company's income on the internet and asked intrusive questions like, "Foreign companies pay well, right? How much do you earn? How much is your bonus, Amy? You must be saving quite a bit, right?" Even though she's my sister-in-law, she has no right to say such things. I'd rather avoid that topic. I skillfully diverted the conversation and got through the situation. If I showed signs of refusal silently, she would probably not force the issue, but my sister-in-law was more oblivious to those around her than I expected. It felt almost as if she were an alien. Why avoid it? You can tell me about your salary, right? Usually, one does not share such information with others. Really? But I want to know. Please tell me. When I sighed and asked, "Why do you want to know so much?" she calmly replied, "Why is it wrong to understand my sister-in-law's financial situation? I can't understand why she seeks such information. It seems we have different values." Feeling this, I had been keeping my distance from her. Even so, Susan's insensitivity went beyond normal bounds. One day on a holiday, she showed up at my parents' house and said, "You know, Amy, I found this in your room," before waving my pay slip around. She probably visited my house on a day I was away and searched my room. Since my parents' living area is on the first floor and my room is on the second floor, my parents didn't notice her going upstairs. However, this behavior was like that of a thief. What are you doing? Amy, you earn a high salary, don't you? Why were you hiding it? More importantly, it's very rude to enter someone's room without permission, isn't it? It's because you've been keeping your income a secret. If you were earning more, you could have increased your wedding gift. The amount you gave was too little. Isn't $1,000 enough? What kind of person is this? On top of being insensitive, her obsession with money is serious. Angered, I spoke harshly to my sister-in-law for the first time. You are, after all, just my sister-in-law. There are things I don't want to discuss and things I want to keep secret. Please don't pry into my personal matters. Even though we are related by marriage, she didn't like being criticized from a younger sister's position. Her face turned red with anger, and she snapped, "What did you say?" "I don't want to be told something like that by a single and cheeky person like you," and stormed off, snorting. "What are the disadvantages of being single? I just want to be left alone." I should be the one who's angry, but maybe I went too far. I thought she would refrain from insensitive behavior from then on. However, since then, her criticism of me only increased. Single people are a burden on society. If you get married and have children, you would contribute to the society's future, but remaining single brings no benefit. There are many selfish and self-centered people. She began to criticize me in front of our family and relatives. From her previous belief that married people are superior, she shifted to attacking single people. My parents also protested against these words. I don't think such prejudice is appropriate. Whether married or unmarried, each person should be respected as an individual. That's right. I'm working hard and contributing to society. I countered my sister-in-law. However, she did not seem convinced. What are you talking about? I'm both married and working part-time, so I contribute to society more than you. My parents and I couldn't help but laugh at her statement. At that time, it was discovered that termites had infested the interior walls of the house. The house was over 40 years old and had some signs of aging, but until recently, we managed to live there by repairing it as necessary. However, the termite issue was something we could not overlook. We were considering extermination, but there was a risk of recurrence even if we did so immediately, and there were doubts about the value of investing in a 40-year-old house. At that time, I proposed an idea. Shall we sell this house and find a new ready-built home? I had lived modestly at my parents' house and had managed to save a decent amount, but buying a new ready-built house might be a bit risky, right? My father was worried, but I reassured him by saying, "It's fine, I'm 35 and can afford to buy a house on my own," and decided to purchase it in my name. I had informed my brother about the deteriorating condition of the house and the move to a new home. He initially asked if he could inherit the family home, but when he learned that repairs would cost over $10,000, he said, then I don't need it, and backed down. We completed the purchase of the new ready-built home and moved in with my parents to start a new life. While we were still unpacking, my brother and his wife visited us. Wow, it's quite spacious. It's a 2-story house with rooms for kids, and there's a garden too. Wonderful. At first I thought it was a congratulatory visit, but that wasn't actually the case. I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant. Surprised by the happy news, my parents and I offered our congratulations. Congratulations. Take care of yourself. It's your first childbirth, so it might be tough, right? Feel free to consult us if you need anything. My father and mother were excited about their first grandchild. Thank you. In that case, we'll also live here from now on. What? We were stunned by the sudden proposal to live together. That's too sudden. I'm sorry, but there just isn't enough room in the house for that. Yes, it's impossible for 6 people to live here. My parents barely managed to express their refusal. That's not true. If the unmarried woman here leaves, all problems will be solved. After uttering those words, my sister-in-law glanced at me with a sense of superiority. Are you talking about me? Yes, you insensitive woman. Isn't it embarrassing to be dependent on your parents at your age, just enjoying the convenient parts while burdening your elderly parents with everything? We have an important role to fulfill in having an heir. You're in the way, so I want you to leave the house soon. My sister-in-law crossed her arms and glared at me with malice. Actually, it's a bit strange for a woman your age to live with her parents. It's better to be independent. Independent. My sister-in-law kept preaching. My brother also agreed, saying, "You can't depend on our parents forever. As your brother thinking about your future, I also think you should become independent and start a new life." What an unreasonable couple. Actually, this house is. Just as I was about to reveal the ownership, my father spoke up first. "I see. So you two are going to move in here." My sister-in-law replied contentedly, "Yes, and we will take good care of you both in the future, father-in-law. But it won't be for free. Shall we have you pay a proper rent?" "What? Rent? Dad, are you really going to take money from your children?" my brother exclaimed in surprise. "You were the one talking about being independent, so naturally you should pay rent. The going rate in this area is about $800. $800, my brother and his wife were shocked. But my father explained, even then, renting a detached house in this area would be much more expensive. Plus, it's near the station and the land is valuable. Shocked by such an amount, my brother and his wife couldn't back down after claiming we should all be independent. "Isn't that a bit high? I can't see the advantage of living together like this," my sister-in-law muttered quietly, clearly audible for all to hear. "Well, we'll manage somehow. The upper floor will be our living space. That settles it then. Amy, please move out as soon as possible. You're a nuisance." Declaring this, my brother and his wife smugly went upstairs. Wonderful. Such a spacious area, and plenty of storage. It was good to drive that person out. Right. The nuisance is gone, and eventually this house will be mine. Everything is going smoothly. They spoke loudly, seemingly enjoying themselves. But my parents and I exchanged glances and quietly nodded. Do they really think they can enjoy living like this? They are blissfully unaware of the circumstances. The fact that this house is in my name was kept secret by my father for future plans. After being driven out, I moved to a short-stay apartment and lived leisurely. Then one day, I received a call from my sister-in-law. I can't find your parents. Their belongings are gone. Did you take them in out of consideration?" "No, my parents left on their own and came to my place." I confidently conveyed this. My parents were relaxing in front of me, enjoying their coffee. "Oh, that was the case, huh? Well, that's good too. Being pregnant and living together can be tiring, so it helps." Forgetting the help they received by living together. Why would she say such a thing? You'll soon be without that luxury, so be prepared. So from next month, the rent will be $1,600, please. What? So that rent, all of it, please. Ha! What are you talking about? Well, you and your husband were sharing the rent with our parents, right? Now that they have left, it's only natural for you who are living there to bear all the costs, isn't it? My sister-in-law still didn't seem to understand the situation. How can you say such things so arrogantly? That house belongs to your father, right? What are you talking about? The house is in my name. What? A moment of silence flowed between us. I decided to explain the situation again. It seems you do not understand, so let me explain. I am the owner of the house, and I paid all the expenses for its purchase. Until yesterday, my parents were living with you and your husband, and I was receiving $800 from each, totaling $1,600 in rent. However, now that they have left the house, only you and my brother are living there. Therefore, from next month, You will need to pay the full rent of $1,600. This is why my father stopped me when I was about to claim ownership of the house. He had secretly been planning to correct my brother and his wife's irresponsible remarks. I haven't heard about this. Then they should come back and stay here. This is absurd. Surprised by the rent amount of $1,600, my sister-in-law became flustered and spoke in a disturbed manner. Did I make a mistake? But you were the one who urged me to be independent, right? Living with parents is proof of not being independent, isn't it? I continued the conversation by pointing out the irony in her behavior. If a couple only bears half of their financial responsibilities, they are not considered independent. That's why my parents decided to leave this house on their own. That's not what I meant. I really appreciate my parents. They actually teach me to stand on my own, so please make sure to pay the rent of $1,600 from next month. Wait a moment. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. A few hours later, my brother called. Hey, what's with the ownership and rent talk? Isn't that totally unreasonable? Why are you being so selfish? Selfish? That's my line. Who intruded into a house bought by someone else and complained until the owner was driven out? Who was it that unreasonably used becoming independent as an excuse? My brother had nothing to reply. Anyway, if you can't make the payment, could you please move out? I don't want someone who can't pay the rent living there. Wait, we are having a child soon, and if it's $800, we'll pay, so let us stay. Are you really having a child? Your stomach doesn't seem to have grown at all yet. What? According to my mother, my sister-in-law was supposedly 6 months pregnant, but her belly was still flat. Could it be a lie? My brother's silence was as good as an admission. I will consider legal action, so please move out soon. Visibly frightened by my words, my brother replied, "Okay, we'll move out soon," and ended the call. When my parents confronted my sister-in-law, she immediately admitted that her pregnancy was a lie. I thought if I said I was having a baby, you all would treat me a little better. Both father-in-law and mother-in-law always favor Amy over me. However, my parents were not cold to my sister-in-law. My father, maintaining an appropriate distance, merely admonished my arrogant sister-in-law as a person. She had faked the pregnancy without understanding his intentions. Perhaps she really is an alien. Afterward, my brother and his wife left the house and decided to rent an apartment in a new location. As the peak of the moving season in early spring approached, the costs associated with the move exceeded expectations and turned out to be quite high. Typically, significant initial costs, including security deposits and prepaid rent, are required when renting a new place. Despite this, my planless brother and his wife, having saved no money, repeatedly visited my parents' home seeking financial assistance, but my parents resolutely refused. My father, stern yet fair, stated, "It is time for you to be independent. I do not wish to associate with those who lack discernment." This incident led my parents to decide to further distance themselves from my brother and his wife. With no financial aid from my parents and difficulty in securing loans from banks, my brother and his wife were pushed into a financially difficult situation. Having once emphasized the importance of being independent, they now faced a situation where they needed to improve their circumstances without parental help. I am curious not just out of interest, but also to see how they would manage achieving being independent on their own. Meanwhile, my father also had deep concerns about my future. "Amy, I believe you are a capable, independent woman. However, perhaps out of selfishness as your parents, why don't you try an arranged marriage just once?" he suggested. "We have found a suitable match for you. It's our friend's son. Why don't you meet him once?" my parents surprisingly suggested. "An arranged marriage for someone like me." "What are you saying, Amy? You are always my pride," my father said. "Dad, I am always grateful to you. Both your mother and I, he added, tapping my head affectionately. Significant turning points in life often hide in unexpected places. Shall we try your first arranged marriage then? With these thoughts, I felt a positive anticipation about new encounters.
A lazy wife who neglects her chores like this should leave the house. My mother-in-law said. I am being blamed. My mother-in-law looked at me with a stern gaze. My sister-in-law said, I will take care of Mom and Scott, so you are not needed here. You always look so tired and gloomy. My sister-in-law, who does no household work at all, said this with a look of disdain. Wait, Scott, your mother and sister are too cruel. I sought help from my husband, but he too spoke with contempt. Just as Mom and sister said, a wife who is only focused on work and cannot do household chores is of no use. Besides, I'm now in a good relationship with a young part-timer, so you are no longer needed. Pack your things and leave quickly. I was stunned while the three of them cast at me to get out of the house. While listening to their words, I looked down and clenched my fists tightly. Still, I tried to remain as calm as possible and said understood. I will leave. The downfall of the family that has always put everything on me is about to begin. My name is Kristen. I am 32 years old, working at a company while taking care of my family. Nowadays, most women continue to work after marriage, and since I'm passionate about my job, I have continued to work at the company I joined as a new graduate. During a busy morning preparation, my husband started a conversation. Hey Kristen, can you take care of this? The deadline for the tax return is approaching. He handed me a pile of bills and receipts. Again? I wish you'd handle your own shop's accounts. I replied seriously, but Scott averted his gaze. You know I'm not good at this kind of detailed work, right? You're always a big help, thank you. Scott and I got married 5 years ago. He was working at a restaurant I frequented, and our conversation there led to us getting along. As we got to know each other better, we started dating and eventually got married. Scott has fulfilled his long-term dream of opening a cafe and is currently running it. However, when it comes to the tedious tasks like buy-in, office work, and accounting, he tends to rely on me just like with the taxes. Sighing, I headed towards the entrance when my mother-in-law approached me. Kristen, I feel like eating Chinese today. Can you take care of it? Understood. Could you please wash the rice instead? My mother-in-law frowned and said, Why do I have to do it? I don't want to. You should come home early and take care of it. Also, Jenny and the kids will be back this weekend, so please prepare meals that the children can eat. What? Okay, understood. I reluctantly answered and left the scene. When Scott and I got married, I had hoped for a life with just the two of us. However, Scott had a different idea. Scott said, My father passed away, and my sister is already married, so I'm worried about leaving Mom alone. Since the house is big, I think it's good for us to live together. I had no choice but to agree. As a result, we started living in my mother-in-law's house with her. When we first started living with my mother-in-law, who is not good at household chores, the house was quite messy. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law had been living on her pension alone. That pension was mostly used for eating out, as she hated cooking. Scott sees household chores as a woman's job and shows no willingness to help. While continuing to work full-time, I am responsible for all the household chores. Jenny, my sister-in-law, also comes back often with her children even after getting married and leaving the house. When she comes over, the burden of household chores naturally doubles. This morning, when I heard that they would be coming over this weekend, I thought to myself, not again. While thinking about this, the dreaded weekend arrived. Ideally, weekends away from work should be a time to rest, but when Jenny's children come asking to play, it's hard to say no. While taking care of the children all by myself, I also need to prepare meals. In the midst of this business, my sister-in-law made an unexpected statement. Kristen, I'm actually in the midst of getting a divorce and will be staying here with the children starting next month. Hope to get along with you. I hadn't heard about that. I answered in surprise. What's the matter? Do you have a problem with it? In response to my sister-in-law's dissatisfied reply, I hurriedly answered, no, it's not like that. Rather, that must have been hard going through a divorce. When are you planning to move in? I asked. The sooner the better, she answered. Knowing that my sister-in-law and her children would be coming back, I was initially bewildered but soon tried to think positively. Since my sister-in-law was a full-time housewife, I thought she would surely be a help with household chores. I hoped that my burden would be lessened. Although I am not particularly close to my sister-in-law, I was hopeful that my load would be lighter. However, that hope was quickly shattered. Perhaps due to being raised by my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law also did not help with any household chores, spending all day in front of the TV and eating snacks. She did not engage in any domestic or external work. I heard that a major factor behind her divorce was her neglect of household duties. I ended up doing the household chores instead of my sister-in-law, as well as preparing meals for her children who are picky eaters. Additionally, preparing for kindergarten drop-offs also became my role. As time went on, I became busier with a new project at work. This led to more days requiring late-night overtime and early morning starts. Upon returning home, the place was so messy that finding a spot to step on the floor was difficult, and I was utterly exhausted. The minute I would come back from work, my family would complain, "Isn't dinner ready yet? Why are you so late?" As I struggled to manage household chores due to my busy schedule, I began receiving harsh comments from my mother and sister-in-law. My mother-in-law said, "The laundry is piling up. Don't cut corners just because you're busy with work." I replied, "Mother, I'm also busy with work." My sister-in-law criticized, "Look how defiant she is towards her mother-in-law. Kristen is scary. And the meals are already made, poor kids. Since you are also home all the time, could you perhaps help a little?" I suggested. Then, my mother-in-law said, "Why would you make Jenny work? Besides, since Scott is a business owner, you shouldn't have to work. If you insist on working, you should at least manage household chores perfectly." I was speechless at her statement, but they looked at me as if it was obvious. That night, feeling at my limit, I talked to Scott. I said, "Even though I understand that work is busy, your mother and sister won't help at all. I'm at my limit." Scott retorted with a glare, "Are you trying to badmouth my mother and sister?" I replied, "It's not like that, but managing everything alone is impossible. I wish at least you would support me. I'm busy with the business. You might not understand since you're just an employee, but running a store is really hard. Don't make your work my burden." Still, as I was at a loss for words, Scott fell asleep then and there, leaving me to ponder alone again. However, shortly after, a good idea came to me. I quickly completed some online shopping, then took the rest of the day off. A few days later, various new household appliances were delivered to our home. I bought a drum washing machine, a cleaning robot, and kitchen appliances that cook automatically. Since there was no one to help with household chores, I wanted to reduce the burden as much as possible. Therefore, I decided to introduce the latest household appliances to make life more convenient. While the washing machine was being delivered, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came over. "Did you buy a new washing machine without asking? The old one still works." My mother-in-law approached me with a look of dissatisfaction. "But this will make laundry much easier and faster," I replied cheerfully. However, my mother-in-law seemed unconvinced and continued, "What is this? A cleaning robot and kitchen appliances too? Kristen, come here." I was summoned to the living room where my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were sitting, and I was instructed to sit on the floor. Scott was also there, sitting confidently next to my mother-in-law. When I asked, "What's the matter?" my mother-in-law exclaimed loudly, "What do you mean, what's the matter? Buying appliances to make it easier for you with the household money? What were you thinking? I'm not trying to be lazy. I just want to make household chores more efficient, I argued back. It's not about that, my mother-in-law criticized. People nowadays rely too much on machines for everything. Then my sister-in-law joined in. Exactly, Kristen. The appliances are still good, and though Scott is a business owner, you're wasting too much money. While my sister-in-law glared at me, Scott also seemed to nod in agreement next to her. I tried to argue back regarding that, but my sister-in-law didn't let me finish, always looking for the easy way out. And you can't even do household chores properly? What were you thinking? She criticized me. Despite wanting to fight back, I remained silent. Angered by my silence, my mother-in-law couldn't hold back anymore and blurted out, "A lazy wife who neglects her chores like this should leave the house." Shocked by her words, I looked at my mother-in-law, who was glaring at me. "With Mom and Scott here, we don't need you." Always looking so tired and spreading gloom like a parasite, my sister-in-law hurled harsh words at me too. Her words were in a tone of utter disdain. "Wait, Scott, your mother and sister's way of speaking is too cruel. I sought Scott's support, but Scott scornfully replied, "What Mom and sister are saying is right. A wife who can't manage household chores is not needed." I stared at Scott in surprise, but he just sneered. "I run a business and have the freedom to spend money. A wife who shops selfishly just to make her own life easier is not needed." I couldn't hide my astonishment and said, "Why would you say that? I'm currently seeing a young part-timer. She's attractive, unlike you. Your presence is no longer needed. Pack your things and leave immediately." Scott coldly uttered those words. Stunned by his words, I was subjected to their criticism of being a failure of a wife. While listening to them, I looked down and clenched my fists in anger. After being used and then spoken to in such a manner, I'll show them. I'll make them regret this, I vowed to myself. Facing them with as little change in expression as possible, I said quietly, "Understood. I will leave." "Finally got it, huh? We'll be better off without a useless wife," my mother-in-law said contemptuously. Ignoring her words, I took out something specific from the living room drawer. "Scott, let's get divorced," I said, presenting him with a pre-filled divorce form. Exhausted, I had prepared the divorce form in advance as insurance. "Huh, you had that prepared? Fine, I'll sign it. Don't blame me if you regret it," Scott said mockingly and signed the divorce form on the spot. That day, I packed all my belongings and moved to a short-stay apartment with the divorce form in hand. No one saw me off. Soon after, I submitted the divorce form to the city hall and rented an apartment in my name. Almost simultaneously with the divorce being finalized, I accepted a promotion opportunity I had previously turned down due to household responsibilities, finally becoming a manager. Achieving career advancement that I had long given up on further fueled my passion for work. An environment where no one hindered my tasks was my greatest joy. About a week after leaving the house, I started receiving calls from my former mother-in-law. However, I was busy and had no desire to speak with someone who had once looked down on me. Therefore, I consistently ignored her calls. A year passed, and one holiday while I was relaxing at home, I received another call from my former mother-in-law. This time, I decided to answer the phone and end it once and for all. "Hello? Kristen, you finally answered. You're terrible. How could you ignore my calls for a whole year?" I could hear my mother-in-law's flustered voice from the other end. "Do you need something?" I responded indifferently. "Well, first, how are you doing, Kristen? Are you doing well?" My mother-in-law asked as if probing. I answered, "How I am doing? I've rented an apartment for myself and am working hard. I've been promoted and my income has increased. I'm living a comfortable life." My former mother-in-law sounded a bit puzzled, but continued really. "So, Kristen, would you consider coming back?" Trying to persuade me to come back. I felt a chill at her sugary voice but asked, "Why now?" "Actually, we're in a tight financial situation," I said coldly with a smile. "I see. I heard Scott's Cafe is making less than $1,000 a month, and neither you nor your daughter are helping, right?" "You knew that." I was well aware that Scott's Cafe was only making about $800 a month in profit since I was in charge of the accounting. Despite boasting about being a business owner, Scott had not been managing sales or administrative tasks properly and seemed unaware of the reality. I was handling the accounting and buy-in, so I'm well aware of the situation. You should have said something. I had no idea that you were a manager at a major company and financially providing for us." "Yes, indeed. I was contributing over $3,000 a month to the household. That was the basis of your living." I was aware that Scott's Cafe was hardly making any profit. Therefore, a significant portion of my income went to providing living expenses for my in-laws. After I left, Scott must have realized for the first time that he couldn't make ends meet with just his cafe's income. My former mother-in-law pleaded earnestly, "Kristen, please, I want you to come back. By the way, how is Scott's Cafe doing now?" I ignored my former mother-in-law's request and asked out of curiosity. "That place might not last till next month. The part-timer has also left." "That's to be expected. With such careless management, it's impossible to maintain the store. Who would want to work under someone who is high in self-esteem but slacks off on important tasks?" As I laughingly spoke, my former mother-in-law was left speechless on the other end of the phone. "Shall we end this conversation? I'll be busy from here on out." In a panicked tone, my former mother-in-law said, "Wait. Since you left, the house has become a complete mess." "A mess? What do you mean?" I inquired. According to my former mother-in-law, the in-laws' house had become completely disorganized since there was no one to take care of the chores. With children around and no one to tidy up, the house was cluttered, no one was cooking, and they had to rely on eating out or buying meals, leading to increased food expenses. Additionally, the washing machine broke, and they had no funds to purchase a new one. My mother-in-law said, "If only you had left those appliances behind." I counted, "Aren't those the appliances you called for being lazy? Why shouldn't I be able to take with me what I bought with my own money?" I regret saying such things, but I never imagined that the house would change so much just because there was no one to do the chores. I confronted my former mother-in-law's angry demeanor. "Why is it that 3 adults can't do household chores? What are my sister-in-law and Scott doing?" My former mother-in-law spoke in a calm voice. "Scott has been unsettled since the part-timer left and the cafe's income stopped. Since then, he just stays at home and doesn't help with anything." "Oh, so much for being a business owner who could freely spend money," I replied sarcastically. "Moreover, Jenny hasn't made any move towards employment and has abandoned household duties. On top of that, she keeps asking me for pocket money for herself and her children. My pension isn't enough to cover all this." I was told by your daughter that you didn't need me because she was there, right?" My sharp retort was met with more sweet talk from my former mother-in-law. "Kristen, please. I can't make ends meet with just my pension. I have no intention of returning. Nevertheless, it seems like your children are quite the parasites, aren't they?" I said, leaving my former mother-in-law without a rebuttal. As I was about to hang up, she pleaded even more. "Kristen, we'll change our ways, so please come back and let's live happily like before." "What? How can one live happily with an unwanted wife?" I scoffed. After a moment of confusion, my former mother-in-law appealed further. "I admit our mistakes. We're family, so let's help each other out. Without help, we won't be able to pay the property tax and we'll have to sell the house. I have no obligation or affection to extend my help. Please sort it out yourselves." With that, the unwanted wife will take her leave. Ignoring her screams, I turned off the phone and blocked my former mother-in-law's number. relaxing at my clean home and enjoying a cup of coffee. A smile crossed my face. 3 months later, when I happened to pass by the location of Scott's former cafe, it was already an empty lot. The store had indeed closed. Furthermore, a sold sign was up at my former in-laws' house. From a conversation with a neighbor I met by chance, I learned they had hurriedly sold the house and were now living a difficult life in a small apartment, causing trouble with daily arguments and unpleasant smells, and receiving numerous complaints from neighbors. It's so typical of them, not supporting themselves and their household through honest work and independence. I looked at my former in-laws' house with a detached gaze and left. Meanwhile, I continued to focus on my work. Recently, a sincere and earnest colleague asked me out, and we started dating with marriage in mind. Remarriage doesn't seem to be that far away. This time, I truly hope I'll find happiness.